it almost seems like in this job market today, no matter where you apply to or how many places you send resumes to, it almost seems like it's almost impossible to get anything really, even especially a full-time job. You know, so many places are just hiring part-time, or they're hiring seasonal positions, and it just seems like you can't even get a normal job, let alone a well-paying job. And it doesn't really help that the economy isn't doing too great right now, where a lot of places can't really afford to hire people. Like, I recently applied to, or at least tried to apply to, a Costco that was just built near me, and they're making such little money that they had to lay a bunch of people off, and they're not even taking resumes. They wouldn't even take the resume, let alone, like, they're not hiring, and they wouldn't even take the resume. So it's like, even places like that, like a Costco, places that make so much money, you wouldn't think that they'd be in trouble. But a brand new Costco, they can't even afford to keep their employees at this point. And I think right now the unemployment rate is around 6%, which is pretty bad where I live. It's about 6% where I live, which, if I remember correctly, I wasn't alive at the time, but in the 80s there was a recession where the unemployment rate was like maybe like 11 to 13%. So it's about halfway there to a recession. And this is obviously after COVID, so that didn't help out the economy either. And we haven't really fully got back on track here. But it almost seems like businesses, especially in a time where the unemployment rate is so high, it seems like businesses aren't encouraged or incentivized to hire people, and especially hire people into well-paying positions instead of just, minimum wage or part-time stuff. And I think it's crazy because my dad, maybe a year ago, was applying to different Canadian Tires, and I didn't know this until recently, but he didn't even get an interview, which is kind of crazy to me, because of all people, I would think that he would at least get an interview or even the job at a Canadian Tire, because he's done sales before. He was a mechanic for years and years. He knows a lot about gardening, and he knows all about tools. So he seems like a perfect candidate to work there, but even he couldn't get the job. So it's like, if he can't get the job, and he has experience, years of experience, and I maybe have some of that. I have some gardening experience and some woodshop experience. So, like, if anyone's going to get the job, it's going to be him, but even he couldn't get it. But it's, like, even when that happened to him, where he had all that experience and still couldn't get the job, he still somehow doesn't understand how the job market is now, where he keeps sort of harping on me to, go get a job, almost like I'm in full control over it, where it's like I all I can really do is send in resumes and hopefully have the credentials to even be seen among the other people sending in resumes. I don't know. It just seems like even my mom, I guess because they're so much older, they just don't understand how things are now, where back then they could easily get a job out of high school where that job was paid enough to where they could buy a car by the time that they were 20. Like, my dad had 2 cars by the time he was 20 years old, and one of them was a sports car. Like, imagine, like, if you guys know what a 70 Chevelle is, anyone watching this video, if you know what a 1969. If you guys know what a 1969 Chevelle is, he had one of those when he was 19. And that was his second car at the same time. So he had 2 cars at that time. Unless your parents own a business and they can give you like a really good job, there's no way you're going to be able to afford that at the age of 19. Either you'll be in school or you'll be working at like a movie theater or something, like nothing that can actually sustain, life beyond just like maybe a few meals a week and maybe car insurance for a car that isn't even that expensive. I don't know. I just think that they don't understand. Like, at this point, since I haven't gotten really anywhere with getting a job in so long, no matter how many resumes I send, my dad just assumes I'm not sending resumes because he thinks that, like, if you send resumes, you'll just get a job. Like, he just thinks that's how it works now. No matter what the unemployment rate is, no matter if places around us are closing down, like a Lowe's closed down around us not too long ago, so it's like my area isn't even that good anyway for jobs. And it's like even my mom, when she was just out of high school, she was able to buy a brand new Mustang as her first car, which her parents, her mom did help her with that, but she basically paid off a $4,000 car working just a normal job. And it's kind of interesting. My mom, you think maybe I could get some nepotism and maybe get a position at her work, but they don't hire family members of employees. It also seems like no matter how many resumes you send, no matter how many replies through emails you get where you have to do those like aptitude tests, no matter how good you do on the aptitude test, like on Indeed, it just seems like you don't get anywhere. And no matter how many you send, it's like my dad makes it sound like I should be sending like 1,000+ resumes. It's like, yeah, you could say that, you should be sending a bunch of resumes, obviously, but it's almost like you have to think of, if you have to send that many, then there's clearly a problem somewhere. Like, I know it wasn't this hard to get a job, like, even 10 years ago, because I had no credentials coming out of high school, and I was able to get a job, and I had it for 6 years, and I turned out to be really good at it. Which there was this funny interview I had. It was at a local grocery store that I go to all the time, and I was talking to the person interviewing me, and maybe about a minute or two into the interview, I realized, does she know who I am, or does she think that I'm like someone else, because she was reading off of someone else's resume. And it's like, this is someone that I've talked to before because I shop there. And I'm like, are the people hiring so unorganized and so careless that they don't even, like, when they ask for my name, they don't, have that piece of paper on the top reading from that one, and they're reading from someone else's? It all just seems weird to me. And now they have, apparently there's like something called, I don't know, it's like called ghost hiring, where they say they're hiring and they may take applications, but they don't actually hire people, which I don't know why that's even legal, but that's whatever, man. And like I said, some places say they're only hiring seasonal positions, where I went to a mall and I went around, asking if places are hiring, and some of them wouldn't even take resumes, and others were just saying, we already passed our 3-month hiring period. In another 3 or 4 months we'll be hiring again. And it's like, one, that's probably a lie, first of all, but also, like, you guys just you guys hire on specific periods of the year. To me, you should just hire when you need to hire people, right? Because then if you don't need people working, you're not going to be able to fit them in anywhere that actually makes sense. And one thing that's really annoying, and I can't really take them seriously when they say this, but you know when older people that have had careers for maybe, 5, 10, 15 plus years, so it's like they don't really have to worry too much about having to find a new job because they know that they're comfortable and they're set within their own career. And then they're telling me to get a job like they have any idea how the market is right now. They haven't looked for a job for probably a decade at least. And if they have, the people that I'm talking about are usually the more wealthy people anyway. And it's like, older people, I just don't think that they understand how things are now. It's like, even relationships are different than they were back then. The jobs are different. Just so many parts of life are just so different to where they haven't been able to understand because they don't really need to, I guess, right? They're already set. They already have everything they need. They may have their house and their career. They may already be married, so they don't need to know those things, right? But they don't even take the time to understand because it doesn't affect them. And it doesn't help nowadays that even a place like Walmart or McDonald's or things like that, for some reason you need a bunch of experience just to work at something that to me should be a starter job. Like, to me, Walmart is like a place where you, like, that could be your first job. That's a good place to have your first job. But now, apparently, you need to have a bunch of experience just to get simple jobs that don't even pay like a living wage anymore. And another example of how, the people from our parents' generation are kind of out of the loop is they lived through recessions and apparently times where the unemployment rate was around 60%. That's what my dad told me. I don't know if that's true, but if that is true, you were still able to get well-paying jobs back then, even with limited experience, because back then, a lot of businesses had training programs for people that weren't experienced. You were still able to buy a car, buy a house eventually, not be in debt, because the cost of living wasn't so high back then. So it's like, even when they say that they had, hard times, they were still manageable to where you can still basically have everything like a house and a family and still be well off. And I don't know, it seems like at this point, trying to use, online websites, they don't seem to work very well. I don't know, I don't even know if these people actually read the resumes at this point. I don't think it should be so hard just to get a normal starter job that I know is not going to be able to pay, for everything really at all, but just to, get some work, get some experience, get some money flowing in, just so I can sustain something. But it seems like that is even difficult, and it goes all the way to people that have degrees in college and university. It seems like they're even complaining. So it's not just the people that graduated from high school only. It's also people that have, credentials. One frustrating thing that stems from all of this is not being able to get a job for whatever reason or for whatever amount of time. It also affects your ability to date, unfortunately. How people say, oh, you shouldn't date until you can afford it, or you shouldn't date until you're able to do this and able to do that, and you have to be able to take a girl out. And it's like, it also doesn't help that girls don't want to date guys that don't have good jobs and a lot of money and enough to possibly buy them certain things. And it's just like there's so many things, so many parts of life that this job market sort of affects and diminishes. And I also live in a high cost area where the car insurance is crazy expensive. Just the cost of living overall is insane, which I think probably has something to do with the job market being terrible, because if the cost of living is high for me, then it's probably high for businesses as well. Which I think is a bunch of bullshit, because the government definitely doesn't help with that at all. They may say that they are, but they definitely do not help. If anything, they hinder our ability to just have a normal society at this point. And getting back to people that already have jobs where they don't have to worry, where they feel very comfortable. It's like, I know someone in my family who has a waitress job, to where if she makes, $400 a day, and yes, a day, which to me is insane, but she doesn't think it's insane. She'll make $400 one day and then make $450 the next day and think, oh, I don't need to work for the rest of the week. And I'm just like, imagine how much you could make if you worked every day. But just because she makes enough in a 2 or 3 day work week where she doesn't want to work anymore, I don't know. It's almost like, it's kind of funny how people like that get the jobs, but people like me who wouldn't even take days off when they're sick, or wouldn't even take days off. Like, after I had surgery one time, I didn't even take more than 3 or 4 days off when the doctor said I should take, I think, like a week or 8 days off. So it's like, I wouldn't take days off if I was sick. Like, I want to work, and once I'm working, it feels normal to me for me to work every day. But it's like, until I get that opportunity, it feels like there's not much I could do. It feels like I'm at the whims and the control of someone that doesn't know who I am or doesn't care what happens to me. It's like, if you talk to these people in the interview, they don't give a shit about you, man. Like, that's kind of the crazy thing about it, is these people who may say, oh, we want our customers to have a great time in our establishment, or we want our employees to feel this or that. It's like, until you're working for them, they don't give a shit about you. And I also think that possibly one reason why they don't care is because look at where they are. They're probably a supervisor, or they're someone higher up in the company, possibly doing all the hiring. So it's like, they don't have to care. Why would they care? They're making a good amount of money. They have a job that probably won't go anywhere unless they do something really bad, or choose to go somewhere else. It almost seems like jobs nowadays aren't out there to benefit the workers or even people trying to get jobs. And what's also shitty is basically every branch of my cousins, their father or their grandfather owned a big company, or even a small company, and all of their kids get to work there and then eventually take over the company. So it's like, I think my immediate family is the only side that doesn't have that situation. So it's like, even at that point, it's like, they don't even have to go through the job market, because their parents gave them the job that they probably didn't even have to earn. I know that at least 80 or 90% of them didn't have to go to school for that line of work, where they were hired like basically maybe around 20. Like, they were maybe in college doing going for a degree that they didn't stick with, they didn't pursue any further. Like, I think one of my great uncles owned a glass company, and his two sons took it over, and it's a multi-million-dollar company now. And then my cousins on the other side of my family, my uncle just retired, and his son took over his spot at a big, I think it's like an investment type of firm, or something with investing. And I think one of the worst parts is that it affects your ability to date. Like, I think that is one of the worst parts. It can affect the time frame, or even at all if you have a family. It can affect, the housing market is another market that's fucking garbage right now too. So a lot of people can't even get jobs in order to pay off, just normal things like food, a really cheap car that costs a lot to get repaired nowadays. The insurance is insanely high, and then you also have to either rent or buy a house, which both of those are so overpriced right now. It's almost like, why wouldn't you just live with your parents? And I think the job market being so bad, especially in Canada, which is where I live, I think that also affects the birth rates and the marriage numbers, and just people being together in general. Because if women don't like guys that don't have a lot of money and aren't able to take them out on dates and just take them to certain places, and then that also leads to possibilities of depression in men, because they're poor, and women don't want to deal with them because they're poor. So then it's a snowball effect, to where it's hard to get out of it, because one, it's not really up to you, and also when you're in that predicament, when you're in that blender, it's hard to not get demoralized and really honestly depressed, and sort of just thinking that there's no way to get out of it. Kind of like it's futile no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try. And I fucking hate when retarded people that either already have jobs, like I said, or maybe just have no clue what's going on right now, and they just tell you, keep applying. You're not applying to enough places. They're assuming that just sending an application means that you're gonna be hired. It's like, that's not how it works. Like, yeah, obviously if you send more resumes, you have a higher percentage, a higher chance of getting hired. It's almost like they think it's easy to find a new job now, when they haven't looked for a job in years. Like, my mom works at the same job she worked at maybe 25 or 30 years ago, when she started as I don't want to say like a janitor, but she was basically cleaning up the aisles and moving boxes and all that. And then randomly the boss, or one of the owners, came by and said, "Hey, do you think you could work in the office?" And then ever since then she's had an office job. Like, that doesn't really happen anymore. And it also doesn't help when a bunch of businesses and workplaces, they specifically look for a specific gender or specific race. Like, since I live in Canada, a lot of businesses will go for the indigenous people first, and it's like, why not just have a level playing field for everyone, and not look at race, skin color, or gender? Like, it just seems like a bunch of bullshit. It just seems that looking for a job, it all just doesn't seem very pro-human or pro-citizen. It seems like no one's really trying to do anything to help or to fix it, because obviously if people can't find jobs, they can't eat, they can't really buy a house, they can't have kids. which when you can't have kids, that also crashes the economy more because you don't have anyone replacing the prior generation to then take over, businesses and just things of life, keep life going properly. So yeah, if anyone that made it this far feels the same, maybe you can comment your situation in the comments, so maybe I can read how fucking stupid other places are and how much bullshit other people have to go through as well. Because I know I'm not the only one, but it's just, So yeah, I guess that's it.